The Leica R 28mm f2.8 E55 is definitely my most beautiful and my favorite wide-angle vintage lens I own. This lens is way better than the 28mm E48 that they produced before this lens. I've used that lens for a couple of hours before I decided ultimately that that lens wasn't worth keeping, and I returned it to the seller. After some researches, I was able to find this lens for a pretty cheap price for what is going on these days, and I can say that I'm extremely happy I was able to add this lens into my kit. This is a semi-modern lens with a lot of optical improvements over the other lenses we are seeing in the Leica R ecosystem. This lens has floating elements, so this lens is performing extremely well even for modern standards. I find this lens kind of difficult to match with other lenses, especially if you try to pair this lens with the Leica R Summicrons that are a little bit more vintage-ish. The mechanics of the lens are pretty fantastic. The focus throw is very smooth. It has approximately 60 degrees focus throw. We have 6 aperture blades that are not that great for some stars, but I don't think you're gonna use this lens for serious and professional landscape photography. I think this is probably the most beautiful lens if you plan to use it for street photography or portrait photography. And what is very convenient about this lens is that we have the inbuilt lens hood like the Leica R Summicrons. There was also a pedal hood here that I removed because it was a little bit annoying when I screw in filters on this lens, while in this way I have zero problems. The aperture blades are going from f2.8 to f22, and you can find this lens both with or without CPU contacts. That's important to know in case you have a Leica R8 or R9 where you want to take advantage of having EXIF data in your photos, especially if you're using the digital module for those cameras. Why this lens is so special? Well, this lens is performing extremely well. Everything you capture with this lens looks incredible. The sharpness is always there, even if you shoot wide open at f2.8, and the corners are gonna get extremely sharp as well if you stop down the lens to f5.6. The bokeh is another remarkable feature of this lens because it's probably the best you can get from any wide-angle lens. It's always very smooth. Another great characteristic of this lens is related to the highlights roll-off. It is truly beautiful. It's always smoothing the highlights roll-off in a very beautiful way, and I never have the problem of harsh highlights with this lens. In fact, this is probably the only lens I will never put a diffusion filter in front of it because the images are just gorgeous straight off the camera. And another important characteristic of this lens is related to the contrast level. The contrast level is always gentle, it's not harsh, it's not washed out, so it's just a pure perfection. So as you can hear, I'm extremely satisfied with this lens and I cannot really recommend it enough. So in case you find this lens for a good price and in good conditions, I highly recommend buying this lens because you will not regret it. It's truly the most beautiful 28mm you can find. I'm also curious to know your opinion in terms of great wide-angle lenses, because I have this 28mm f2.8, but I also have the Zeiss 25mm f2 that is performing extremely well in low light. The lens is also pretty fantastic, I love it, but I prefer the size, weight and overall image quality coming out from this lens. So this is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!